we noticed this one thing that all runners with shin splints do. And that is, in this video, I'm going to share with you a few techniques that's going to help you overcome shin splints for good. At least you're going to identify the root cause of it and hopefully get on the path to recovery.
I know we throw out the term shin splints a lot, and a lot of athletes say that, a lot of coaches say that, and sometimes people may not know exactly what shin splints is, where that term comes from, or what is actually happening in your body with shin splints. So I want to kind of give you some background information on that first. And first thing I want to highlight here is a few terms for shin splints. So we say shin splints, but in the medical community, you may see or hear the term medial tibial stress syndrome or posterior tibial periosteoitis. Now, those are just two medical terms for shin splints that you might see if you read an article, or if you go see your doctor, they may document it as one of these two terms. Again, it's not anything that you need to remember. It's just for your information. But let's talk about what shin splints actually is and what happens when you experience this injury. What you're going to feel is a dull, achy, sometimes a sharp pain, sometimes an intense soreness in the front or the side of your legs. Now, every athlete is going to experience this a little bit differently. Everybody has a different pain tolerance, and so the way you describe the pain might be a little bit different. We see this 99% of the time in runners. However, you might be a gymnastics athlete, you might be a baseball player, softball player, basketball player that may also experience this pain as well. So we do see these in athletes of all sports. However, our track and field athletes and our cross country athletes are going to experience it a little bit more, just in our observation in our clinic. Now, let me go over, how do you know if you have it? Again, this pain is going to be something that you're going to feel with exercise. Most of the time it's going to be running. You're going to feel it on the front of the side of your leg. And one of the most important things to note is that it's going to be in a diffuse area, meaning it's not really always going to be something that you're going to be able to pinpoint with one finger. Usually when I have someone come to me complaining of shin splints, they kind of point in multiple spots, or they use their entire hand to kind of point along their leg to describe it, where the pain is. And so this picture is a really good illustration of that. Also, if you are somebody that has a history of a stress fracture, you could be at risk for sustaining shin splints in the future. Again, it's just something to keep in mind. Just make sure that you're going through your rehab process properly and that you're going through it very patiently and going back to your return to run program in the proper manner. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So what causes shin splints? There's a couple of things that causes it. It's really hard to pinpoint to one specific thing. This is a list of it here. I'm not going to go over everything that's listed here. This is, again, just for your information and for the specific purposes of this particular video. I am going to emphasize the running mechanics portion. So the excess stress on one leg, I'll kind of talk about that a little bit later, because when we are seeing people with shin splints, we do a running analysis, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, what that entails. But again, those are some of the causes of shin splints. Now, with this particular slide, I wrote a blog on this, and I'm going to put the link in the description below. But you really want to be careful that you're not running with any of these conditions that you see here on the screen. So a stress fracture or compartment syndrome are two very serious conditions that can mimic shin splints early on. So again, I'm not going to go into depth on these two conditions because that's not the purpose of this video, but I'll put this slide up just for your information. And again, as I said earlier, I have a link in the description below where you can read an article that I wrote on these two conditions and on things that can mimic shin splints. So just very important to identify these. If you're a coach, or especially if you're an athlete as well, just making sure that you get checked out if you have any of these particular symptoms. So now we're going to talk about the treatment of it. So first thing that we're going to do is talk about different ways that we can decrease pain. And there's a variety of ways that you can decrease pain when you have shin splints. That can be anything from rest to ice to some gentle stretching to just decreasing your mileage or modifying your training plan. There's a host of things that you can do to decrease pain. And again, I'm not going to go into depth on any of that because every athlete is different and you have to figure out what is best for you and your particular situation. Improving flexibility and improving your strength and balance is going to be extremely important as well when you're talking about overcoming shin splints. A lot of times when you have shin splints, experience a lot of tension and tightness in your ankle. So it's very important to identify that and to improve the flexibility in that area if indeed that is something that you and your athletic trainer or your doctor or physical therapist has identified. Improving your strength and balance, that goes without saying for all athletes. I mean, we're always trying to improve our strength and our balance because that is just essentially what's going to help prevent injury in the future, but it's also going to protect your joints from the additional stress that you place on it throughout your season. And then lastly is a return to run program. And this is where I'm going to really go in depth on what that actually looks like. So from here, I'm going to transition out to the trail. I'm going to demonstrate a few drills and exercises with you and really talk about what we do in our facility to help someone get back to running after they have recovered from shin splints. So stay tuned as we transition over to the trail, and I'm going to go over some specific return to running program techniques that you can do if you're dealing with shin splints.
So whenever we do a running analysis for someone that's complaining of shin splints, we see this probably 99% of the time. We see the same exact thing, and that is an overstride with a dorsiflex ankle. So what we see at their point of what we consider initial contact, which is the point where their foot initially hits the ground. So in this case, I'm going to demonstrate it with my right leg. So let's say I'm running, both feet are in the air, and I'm getting ready to land on my right leg. The most common thing that we see, extend their leg out in front of them, pointing their toes up towards the sky, and land on the ground in this position. So both feet are in the air, and then when they go to land with that right foot, they're in this position. And then what happens after that is their foot goes flat on the ground, and then their body goes over their foot, and then they kind of repeat that cycle over and over again. So I want you to imagine landing like this, and this is the way that I kind of explain the cause of shin splint. So wherever you are watching this video, just stand wherever you are, or you can do this seated as well. I want you to point your toes up towards the sky. Now what I want you to do is put your foot flat on the ground, and then point them up towards the sky again, and flat on the ground, and then up to the sky again, and then just repeat that movement over and over. Let's do that for about 5 minutes. Just kidding. You don't have to do it for that long, but you can feel the tension that builds up in the front of your leg as you do that movement. So imagine if I'm doing that combined with the impact that is sustained as I'm running. So if I'm doing this in addition to this and landing, so I'm essentially doing that over and over again. And so that's a very common observation in all of our clients that complain of shin splints. So now that we've identified that as one of the main causes, what is the solution? What do we do about it? So the first thing we do is, after identifying that, is teaching them and training them on not overextending their leg in order to move forward while they run. So let's get back into this position again, and you guys can practice this with me. So just imagine if I'm running and I land with my foot out in front of me like this in this position. My heel is on the ground, my toe is pointing up towards the sky. I have to use a lot of energy to get my body over this foot so that I can move forward and start running and repeat that cycle over and over again. Instead, what I want to do is train my body so that when I land as close to my center of mass or to my hips as possible. That way, when I get ready to move forward, my body can get over this foot a lot easier, a lot quicker, and using less energy. So the way that we do that, one of the ways that we do that is teach people what it means to get in what we call the runner's position. Runner's position is standing on one leg. In this case, I'm just going to stand on my left leg with my right knee bent and the foot under my hip. And I practice getting in and out of this position very quickly. The reason is because when I am running, my foot needs to travel under my hip in order for me to go forward. That's just part of the running cycle. But if I avoid that, or if I try to swing my leg past that position and kick it out in front of me, what ends up happening is I land in this position. So instead of kicking my leg out, I want to think about just pulling my foot off the ground. So it's a different way of viewing how you run. Instead of striding it out, let's just think of pulling my foot off the ground. Everything else will take care of itself. We will talk about weight shift and how to increase our stride and increase our speed and other areas of our body, the body position, all of that, posture, all of those things are very important. I have other videos on that, but the first step to get over the shin splints issue and to get out of the habit of landing like this is to focus on pulling that foot off the ground. So here are a few drills that we would do to help someone overcome that era and get back to running as quickly as possible. The first thing is teaching them what we call a change of support drill. So what you're going to do is stand on one foot, keep one leg bent like so. You're going to make sure when you bend that knee that the foot is directly under your hip. It's not back here and it's not out here. It's just directly under your hip. And then you're going to quickly switch to the other foot. So it's here. What that drill is doing is teaching me how to pull my foot off the ground and to pull it at the right angle. So when I bring my foot off the ground, I'm not trying to swing it out in front of me. I'm not trying to kick it behind me. I'm pulling it directly under my hip. That's very important. So when we start running forward, we want to do the same thing. So this is the first step. After we've done the change of support, we can add a forward movement with that. We're not running yet. We're just taking this step by step, going very slowly. Now, what you can do, I love doing this with a ladder or having some tape on the ground so I can monitor the distance that someone is going. But you don't need that. You can do this at home. You can do this in your garage. You can do this in your driveway. You can do this out at the track or at the park before you go for a run. What you're going to do is simply stand on one leg. You're going to shift your body weight, and then focus on pulling that foot off the ground. So notice what I'm not doing. I'm not here and trying to reach out in front of me. That's the habit that we're trying to break. And we do that by going slow. So instead of thinking of that, let's think of pulling this foot off the ground. And so another thing that I tell my athletes to think about when they're doing this drill is whatever leg I'm standing on first, that's the leg I'm thinking about. So in this case, it's my left leg. I'm only focusing on my left leg in this case. My right foot is in the air and it's under my hip. As I shift my body weight forward, I'm going to feel my body weight getting towards my toes of my left foot. At that point, I pull the foot off the ground. My right leg, I don't need to worry about. It's going to land where it needs to. The mistake that people make is that they think about this leg way too much when they're doing this drill. And so when they go forward, they want to either stomp the ground or they want to kick their leg out in front of them. If you just forget about it and focus on the left leg, focus on the leg that's on the ground, focus on pulling it up, that right foot is going to land where it needs to. That is what we want to do as we're going back to running, whether it's on the track, whether it's on the trail, whether it's on the road, whether you're a cross-country runner. No matter what distance you run, this is what we want to start to think about. And it's really just getting out of the habit of kicking that leg out in front of us, landing in this position, and trying to focus on pulling this leg off the ground so we can land in this position. Have more questions about shin splints? Put it in the comment below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our future videos regarding running tips and how to overcome running related injuries. Thank you for watching.